Hello, everybody. This is Gino Johnson, CEO of Champions for Veterans, and I am so excited for today's episode of Convos with Heroes. We have an amazing American hero in John Morgan on with us, and I am so pumped to share his story and for everybody else to know really what he's got going on and how he's been able to help the world. But of course, before we get into the interview with John, I want to go ahead and say hey to my dad. Hey, Dad, how you doing?
Hey, son, I'm excited. We got a devil dog on the call, John Morgan, a great American hero. I can't wait to hear his story.
Man, oh yeah, me too. I'll tell you, John, I was in the ROTC in high school, Marine ROTC in high school. So I have a little bit of a connection with the Marines for a couple of years I was there. So we don't, it's not going to be me and you versus my dad here or anything like that. Just want to make sure I put that out there. But
no, my brother's an active duty colonel, so we're all good.
Oh
yeah,
in the Army.
Oh, good.
Wow, I love it. Well, look, John, let me go ahead and read just John's background, his bio here before we get to know John a little bit more. So many members of John Morgan's family have served in the armed forces, which was influenced by his grandfather's actions during World War II. The idea of service to others resonated strongly with John and served for 13 years in the U.S. Marines. Even though he is no longer wearing a uniform, he still has a mission to continue to serve the country and wants to honor the legacy his grandfather had begun. During his 13 years in the Marine Corps and multiple trips to Afghanistan and Iraq, John invested well in the stock market. There were a few fundamentals that he stuck with and took a conservative approach to investing, which served him well. He didn't come from money, but he was able to develop an investment portfolio nearing $600,000 by the time he exited the Marines. Wow. That portfolio was liquidated to create IzMaCo Investments. During his time in the Marines, John constantly heard horror stories about off-base properties that were not well maintained. Landlords would take advantage of a situation, and there seemed to be little recourse for a service member to take. The worst would be is when a spouse was deployed or on an extended military maneuver and their family would go without essential services. IzMaCo's top priority of having well-maintained homes is so someone that is serving the country has their head in the game. No one will be able to concentrate on what's in front of them if they are worried about their family dealing with a broken HVAC system in the middle of July. That is certainly the truth. Real estate can be a lucrative investment, but we have the service member in mind. With a strong portfolio of 8 properties valued at over $1 million, IzMaCo will strive to teach service members how to invest while simultaneously providing them better quality rental properties. IzMaCo can do this with the assistance of shareholders that will invest not only in this current project, but to build a legacy that will continue to help others into the future. The focus is to provide an investment opportunity that is recognizable and provide the returns that investors should expect with a solid exit strategy for the shareholders. IzMaCo wants to create the John Red Morgan Foundation to honor John's grandfather and Medal of Honor recipient John C. Morgan, a B-17 pilot during World War II. The foundation will one day support veteran startups to help fund the veteran entrepreneurial spirit. Through these investments, IzMaCo seeks to be the change it wanted to see in this world. Wow, that is amazing, John. So excited to have you on with us today, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate your invitation. I'm excited to share the story and see where this goes.
Perfect. Awesome, sir. Well, tell us about yourself.
Well, I think it's good to start at the very beginning because of everything that really influence of how I got here today. I spent 13 years in the Marines. I was enlisted, graduated from college, wanted to become an officer. Things didn't work out that way, but still served in uniform for 13 years. I was an intel specialist, went to Iraq once, Afghanistan twice, multiple other deployments all over the place. And I was an embassy guard for 3 years, which was one of the more interesting times of my career. I spent a year in Egypt right when the revolution started. So that was pretty interesting to be there in a time of history. My second post was in Moscow, Russia, which is more interesting today because of recent events going on there and being like right there in the middle of everything. I mean, it was 10 years ago, but still it's kind of, it's crazy to be there and see what's going on now. And then my third post was Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So it was a pretty interesting time there. I had a great view of Brazil, of all those great pictures of the Cristo and the bay and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool. And then the reason why I wanted to join the military is it's kind of a family affair that we've really done for a long time. Like you mentioned earlier, my grandfather is a Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. He's the only Medal of Honor recipient after being awarded the medal was captured later, and he's used propaganda by the Germans. And so that was a lot of influence. I've had, cousins and other extended uncles that I've served. My brother joined the Marines. He been in every conflict since the first Gulf War. He went to college, so he wasn't involved in the Balkans, but when he got out, the Army paid for his school and became an officer. And so when he was in Afghanistan, I was in Iraq. And when I was in Iraq, when I was in Iraq, he was in Afghanistan. And when I was in Afghanistan, my sister was in Iraq because she was in the Army too. She was an officer. Wow. And she got out as a captain. My father is a retired first sergeant from the Air Force. And so there was a long, proud legacy of service to a higher cause than us. And that's kind of what led me to join the Marines.
Wow. That's fascinating, man. Of course, you're talking about your grandfather. Of course, I'm big into reading about Medal of Honor winners, so I just got him pulled up. John Kerry Red Morgan, August the 24th, 1914. January the 17th, 1991 is when he passed away. Air Force pilot, World War II, received a Medal of Honor for his actions during a 1943 bombing run over Germany. Oh my God, man. This gets I love this kind of stuff. And
he was
that's incredible.
And the reason why he was captured, it was when he was awarded the medal, they wouldn't let him fly anymore. And so, the biographies and anything written about him, they talk about how he just demanded to fly back with his men back into battle, and they finally relented and let him go. But that actually didn't happen. What happened was he snuck onto a plane and got shot down, and they wanted to court-martial him because they were so angry that he was captured. And but you couldn't really court-martial a Medal of Honor recipient. But he spent the last year and a half in the camp of the war, and fortunately or unfortunately, the way you look at it is that shortly before the end of the war, they made moonshine out of their first aid rations, and he got highly intoxicated and beat the heck out of a German guard, and he was sentenced to be executed in the camp. And 2 days before his execution, the Russians, the Red Army, liberated the camp before it occurred. And so, wow. Heck of a story. We have his execution papers, and they actually, we don't have them anymore. They're building the Medal of Honor Museum, or the National Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, Texas. And we gave a permanent loan to the museum of his medal and all his other archives. I think it was a good place for it to go. I was pretty concerned about like what would happen to his stuff after, every living memory of him is no longer here. And I thought that was the best place for it to go. And so I was happy that that's where all his stuff is now.
Oh man, no, that's fascinating. I mean, as many veterans as I've talked to over the past few years of helping vets, I've never talked to the family of a Medal of Honor winner. So this is pretty incredible data. You're talking about the same name, talking about your grandfather. Man, talk about that legacy. I mean, you're talking about, I come from a family of people serving the military too, but my God, how was it going through basic training? I got to ask you this question. Did anyone ever find out about your grandfather before and then knew you and just asked you, were you kin to him, or some military stories? Or what about having your commanders when they found out that your granddaddy was a Medal of Honor winner? What happened then?
During boot camp, I don't know how they found out. Somehow they found out, and I wasn't really giving a whole lot of flack for it. I remember I'm 6'5", and so in Marine boot camp, like part of our physical fitness test is pull-ups, and I had a horrible time with them. And one of the drill instructors that just he was one of those guys that got my mind, was able to get my mind, and just like it was always related that like I was disappointed to my grandfather and stuff, and I always connected those pull-ups to my disappointment to that. But that was pretty much really the only thing that I got for it. I think one of the things that was really cool that the Marines allowed me to do is I got to spend about 5 months in Germany, and during that time I got to go to his POW camp
Wow.
in Barth, and there's just a big rock that states that this is where the camp was. But the fact that I got to stand there and walk through the field of where, you know, this he once stood, you know, 60, 70 years ago. So
No doubt about it, man. I figured you was a pretty big guy because, you know, I was in special forces and I would always go to different embassies in South and Central America. We'd hang out and party with the Marines at the embassy down in Bolivia and places like that. They were all kind of big. They looked the part, man. Guys that were working at all the embassies and everything overseas, the Marines and everything like that. So talk about that, man. You joined. What got you from high school? Talk about growing up, your dad, and then, you know, making a decision to join the military. I mean, I know what your family history and all that, but nothing says you had to go that way. Talk about that.
it was something I've always wanted to do, and I joined late, and I wanted to become an officer. And so, but one of the reasons why I joined late was I did drop out of college a few times. I thought that I was going to make money on the stock market, and I was on my way there, and you know, things just didn't come to fruition. And it's I learned to be a little bit more humble with you know, opportunity that's out there. However, one of the big reasons why I didn't join is because I was severely overweight. I lost 137 pounds to join, and so
Wow.
and I just think that I really struggle with the physical fitness aspect in the Marines, especially the pull-ups. I guess I could look back and say that I wish I joined one of the other services, because I think I could have done push-ups and all this other stuff. And but I also wouldn't have had the opportunity that I did in a lot of the ways, like becoming an embassy guard, which was, you know, let me see a very unique part of the world that, you know, in a way that many other Americans don't get to see it. And so, like, getting my picture in my dress blues in front of the pyramids, and being in a red square, and getting the photo in front of the Cristo in Rio de Janeiro. So that was one of those cool experiences. But that's why I wanted to do it. I also think that it was just in the time of that I joined was back at 06, was during the surge, and I kind of thought that if I didn't ever wear the uniform, I would end up regretting it. And so I made the decision to finally get in shape, and I did it. And my dad wasn't too keen on it. He even says, like, don't you think your grandfather served enough for us? And it was like, I'm like, I can't play that game. It's like, I gotta live on my own merits, not the legacy of his coattails. So
yeah. How old were you when you joined? How old were you?
I was 25. So
Yeah. That is late.
yeah. And I was, people kept asking me, why did I join so late? And at the time, I didn't know I did. I just kind of thought, well, it's time to either put up or regret it later in life. And so I finally did it. And it wasn't until I actually arrived where I realized how much late in the game that I was.
Yeah, man, I was 17 when I joined, and so that's 8 years. You know, I can imagine, man, at that time. I mean, of course, you're at 17. I was in such good a shape. I didn't even feel basic training. People talk about hard, well, it wasn't nothing. Basic wasn't nothing. AIT wasn't nothing. I don't think I started feeling anything until I got at least over 30 years old. Then I started. Once I hit over 30, probably about 33 years old, I started understanding the 5-mile runs and how hard they were. But you know, at 17 to probably, you know, 30, I didn't even feel a thing. I thought everybody was just wimping out that couldn't do stuff. You just a wimp, you know.
By the time I went to boot camp, I think I was probably, you know, relative compared to many other people, I was probably in great shape. And I think compared to like when, you know, where I used to be, where it's like getting up in the morning was, you know, I get out of breath just by like by standing up from the bed, and to being in shape that I was now. that I thought I was this beast, but by the time I went to boot camp, I'm like, oh, I still have a lot of way to go compared to
Yeah.
these a lot of these younger guys. So it was quite the journey from that day I stepped on the yellow footprints.
No doubt about it. So talk about this, man. So you join the Marine Corps, you go in, you're serving in combat, you do all your things, you go overseas and things like that. And then you make a decision at what point you were going to get out, because, you know, with your background and family history, I mean, you could have easily did 20 or 30 years in, or just been a total lifer. So talk about that decision, you know, when you were looking at getting out, and just kind of go over that for me.
It was it's one of those things where what's that saying? You're more than the sum of your past mistakes. And I made a mistake. I was going to do 20. It's easy to say, like, you know, sit there and rationalize everything that went on and say someone else screwed up. And, you know, I did something that all the Marines do, or not all of them, but a good portion of Marines do. And I worked on homework with somebody that I wasn't supposed to. It was very hard for me to accept. And again, it was kind of like, I don't really know how to talk about it without looking like I'm making excuses, because I mean,
Yeah.
they set up the rules and saying that you were supposed to do this independently, and I didn't. I worked on some homework with somebody, and we got caught. And I took more of the brunt of it. You know, at the time I was single, and the other Marine he was married and had 3 or 4 kids. And so it was kind of, well, how's this going to go? And so that was, I could sit here and give a story about how it was time just to get out, but it was that and the reason why I think it's important to bring up is that people screw up. And it taught me a lot of empathy of, you know, people that make mistakes. You know, people, when you fall, there should be an opportunity to get back up without being hit in the head all the time, saying that you screwed up and, you know, you don't deserve a second chance. And it was kind of one of those things where, you know, compared to what I did in the past and everything up to that point, that I think that, I could sit here and say, I wish I think I earned a second chance, but you know, it is what it is. And so that's why I got out, and I had a horribly hard time for it, because I think some of the things that, especially in Iraq, I started struggling with, because it was kind of like, why did I survive Iraq for something like this to end my career?
Like something so petty. It's like, wait a minute, man.
Yeah, and I was,
and
I was with a group of people that they were being intel. My intel officer was having security violations, and my E9 was doing some probably not the most ethical things, and I was just in a bad position where, you know, that I gave them the opportunity to protect themselves. And again, like, how do I rationalize that when I did screw up?
So, no, look, brother, I tell everybody, man, I did 20 years in, and had it not been for some of my senior NCOs and people that looked out for me, because the reality is I don't know anybody that makes it through a military career, even 5 or 10 years unscathed, that done nothing wrong. I always like to say, I don't know anybody that's Jesus Christ's first cousin. You know, I mean, that you just lily white, you ain't never done nothing. I mean, really. I've never met that guy. I mean, you know, I've been around a lot of guys. I promise you, I've never met him. And they maybe didn't get caught. Maybe had a supervisor that said, hey, look, we're going to do this. You're going to go on guard duty some extra. You know, we're going to do this. But sometimes, you know, you don't get that guy, and you do end up paying with your career. Because I can tell you right now, I had 2 or 3 things that I could have paid with my career, okay? But I had guys that said, hey, man, all right, I'm putting my foot up your tail. You're going to go and apologize. You're going to do this. And I said, no, Roger, Sergeant Major. I mean, you leave and you go, oh, my God, man, I was so close to getting, I mean, I had a couple things when I was a sergeant or whatever. And so now it's just keeping it real, man. And the great thing, but look at this, John, you fell forward, brother.
Yeah. Oh, and I was falling back. And that was one of the things why I think it's really important. That's why to bring that up, because again, it's uncomfortable for me to speak about, but I think it's very important to bring up because the idea that I have now resulted from when I was in the hospital after trying to harm myself.
Okay.
And so that's why I want to be able to bring it. Why I think it's very important to, because of the stigma of what goes on in the military and the struggles that we deal with and how we handle it. And really, you know, a lot of us always talk about like how we would do something or how we would handle it until we're in that position. But when you find yourself in that position, it's a lot different. And I think it's.
So I know you got a passion, man. I know you got a passion for, you know, we're losing 22 veterans a day to suicide. The mental issues affect all of us, including myself. I got a call the other week, and I'm gonna tell you how people understand what veterans deal with. I got a call from a veteran last week when the bombs went off over in Ukraine, and he was frantic. And he was to the point, his PTSD is real. Oh my God, you know, I'm watching the news and the bombs are going off. And I had to literally get on a FaceTime video with this veteran and pray with him. And like, okay, brother, yeah, it's real, but I'm a believer. I said, man, Jesus Christ is real too. So we see that, we understand that, but you got a mission and a purpose too. And I don't think a lot of people, when they hear about, you know, veterans still dealing with, I remember when the Afghanistan thing went down, we pulled out, I was talking to guys about that, and it shook people, to veterans that I know, to the core, that pulling out of Afghanistan. And then last week was another big incident. Talk about that, man, because a lot of civilians, when they see this thing overseas, they go, oh, okay, Russia's in the Ukraine. But if you've been in combat or you know somebody, you've been there, how does that affect you, and how do you help people, man, deal with this kind of stuff?
And that's really why I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do now, is to be able to help. What you just said about Afghanistan I went through that. It was a terrible feeling. I actually went to Virginia with my wife and her parents to just visit Middleburg, Virginia, I think, and we're going to take our parents to Washington, D.C. And like, I just stayed in the hotel. I didn't want to go out. Like, I tried to keep it in, and it didn't. And I wouldn't say exploded. I didn't explode, but it was just like, it finally, like, I had a hard time keeping it in, and my wife and I just kind of took a drive and had some pizza and talked about it. But it's I don't really know how to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it, just because it's like, you know, on one side they talk about like, well, how many more are we supposed to like leave there to die and stuff like that. And it was just kind of like, but okay, yeah, is losing any more in vain and stuff like that. But it's still hard about, like, you know, the friends that I have lost there, and when we come home, that they've taken their own life because of that. And like, you know, what was the purpose? Was it a waste? And you know, it's I am one of the types that I try not to get too into policy or you know, politics of anything, but it was just, I just don't think that, I think that we could have stayed there under a strategic measure that we do in a lot of places. Like, we're still in Germany, we have bases in Turkey and Korea and Japan as a presence. That if I don't think we should have been out there, you know, really defending the country, but I mean, we could have stayed on the bases. And I'm going to go down the rabbit hole with this, but it was just that it was difficult. And so it was really kind of gave me a little bit more resolve to continue what I'm doing now. There's been a lot of times where I've wanted to quit, but it was kind of that mission, that overall purpose of what I'm trying to achieve here. That when I think that if I was trying to do this for my own personal enterprise, I would have given up a long time ago. But I think that it's to continue to help, and how I'm going to do it and how to get there. And so it's it really showed me that I think I'm still continuing to doing something important. I'm not there yet, but I think I'm going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's still going to take a few years to build,
Yeah.
but it's the process of getting there.
So go ahead and give us some of the details, man. I know we were talking a little bit before we started recording, your passion to help veterans in the suicide issue. Do you have an organization of your own, or you just talking to guys one-on-one, or how can people get in contact with you? Website, give some of those details if you don't mind.
Right now, I developed my company. It's called IzMaCo. I named it after my 3 English bulldogs, Izzy, Man, Coco, because sometimes
spell it out, man, for people like me. Spell it, because don't assume I know how to spell that. Please.
Yeah,
don't.
just IzMaCo is IzMaCo. My website's getting revamped to what is more closely aligned to my mission. So if you go on there, it's in essence, it's still there, but like it's getting more towards what I'm trying to do, because one, I think that when I was having a hard time towards the end, like when I came home, Izzy's no longer with us. But the dog didn't care what your day was. She was just happy to see you. And like, I just wanted to be able to say, that's kind of the type of company I want, is to be able to be that companion that's like, no matter how bad your day was, it's just there to, it's glad to see you and wants the best for you, and just spend time with it. And so I also kind of think that might be kind of on the lines of being somewhat cheesy, but in the military, we always talk about being sheepdogs and protecting the herd and stuff like that. Well, I mean, English bulldogs aren't really the sheepdog protective type, but they're great companions. And sometimes that sheepdog needs to in their older age and retirement, needs to just become that great companion. And that's what these dogs are. And this is what I want to be able to develop into, saying like, this is what this company is. It's just that companion that people need. And so when I say that the idea sparked when I was in the hospital, it was the idea sparked, but I didn't exactly know. And things evolved into what they are now through some of the experiences of developing this company. But when I said, hey, I want to develop something to help vets, really that bring them back part of the community, what is to feel like they belong again. But a lot of it is through my experience of when I got out, said, how am I going to do this? So I had a nice portfolio from the stock market. It was not bad for being a crayon eating jarhead enlisted. I invested well. And so, but I had a hard time finding lending because it wasn't like a W-2, it wasn't real income. So nobody would really lend to me. And there's other things out there that I know now, but didn't know at the point back then. So, oh well. But I liquidated it and started buying properties and fixing them up and distressed properties. And what I want them to be is for service members to be able to live in. So that way, is some of the things in the biography that we talked about, is that good quality properties for service members to live in. And I think that I'm trying to expand the portfolio. I have 8 properties. And being in military towns, there's a symbiotic. I'm starting to hate this word because it's being overused, but it's the key word, symbiosis of what we can really do to help each other. So I think the first step is to try to build this portfolio with properties and expand it and try to get revenue generated. And hopefully I can do that with the help of shareholders, with the like-minded ideas of what this is. But in time, where I really hope that this is what will come to fruition, is the foundation that I've talked about, is how I'm going to help those service members by reducing vet suicides. I might not be able to do it right now at this point, but I think I will be able to help more in the long term. So if I have properties that are predominantly for vets or active duty service members, hopefully attract shareholders, get them to, do my duty to them. They expect a return. I'll do it for them, but they're going to want to exit. I want to be able to buy that equity back, and then redirect the revenue towards the foundation of being able to help those vets with their missions, their nonprofits, their startups. So the whole cycle that I want to be able to create is that service members rent through the BH, the basic allowance for housing, which is apparently pretty guaranteed and underwritten by the government, isn't going to the bottom line of an investment company. Active duty service members rent is going to go towards helping vets in their projects. And that's the legacy that I want to be able to develop into the future. But I think right now I just have to, that I can't do it with just my money alone. And I think that's why I am trying to attract shareholders now. That saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, make it recognizable to what people do for investments. But again, they're going to exit. And so when they exit, then that's when I'll be able to start really taking on my mission. And hopefully, since I'm really trying to attract more accredited former military investors, that they understand that mission and why I'm doing it. So hopefully it's kind of they want to continue being part of it, and they help continue. I mean, again, it's up to them. Like, there's not going to be any pressure of me trying to, get them to exit. I mean, but it was, but I think there's going to be an understanding of, especially at the very beginning, because you look at some of the information that came out on some of these on-base contractors that were not doing their job, and they were taking a bunch of money and not really fixing the on-base properties. And then you get people on these slumlords off base that aren't fixing and repairing the way they should. And so I think that really it puts me in a sense of, or this position of like, I have a duty to investors, but it's the way to, my duty is to improve the properties, to make them go up in value. So I think it's a great ecosystem of what I'm trying to develop. And so hopefully I didn't ramble on and go too much down the rabbit hole, but that's the goal.
Now I know my son, this is his world, so I'm gonna let him ask a question here. He's into this kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, man, John, I think that's so cool. I'm all about investing for a purpose, right? Investing in a purpose. And it's really cool that you're doing that. I think, a wise friend of mine, he actually kind of what you're doing is described it as this, when it comes to an Oreo, the best part of an Oreo is the cream, right? And, and it brings those two cookies together. And what you're doing, you got the properties and the veterans who you're able to support, and by taking that net income and putting it and reinvesting it back into the veteran community is amazing. And the other side is helping investors to, of course, they, like you said, they want to return, they want to be able to kind of invest in something that provides a return, but investing in something that has purpose, right? That's going to change lives, going to help people. That's really just amazing.
And that's a lot of the long-term cycle that I think I'll be able to implement, is that as time goes on, I generate more properties that, like, hey, I'm sorry, let me let my dog out because she's going to sit there and bark the whole time. My apologies. Give me 2 seconds.
No problem.
Dogs are amazing. They're like little kids. Like, they don't bark at all until you're on like a phone call or a Zoom call or something like that. And then all of a sudden they decided to get real vocal. But in time, it's also, I want to be able to say, hey, like, a lot of ways I don't want to invest in these startups. I want to be able to provide grants, but kind of like, hey, let's have this agreement though, is that if we're able to get you up and going, grants, then you don't have to start up with a bunch of debt. Then that means you can function a lot easier from the beginning. You don't have to worry about paying off all this debt. So, some of these houses I have, I now am able to start supporting some of these homeless vets that are looking for jobs and skills. Let's try to create some system here of, you get these grants, but here's like this vet that's having some hard times and needs to be able to find a way to support his family. So let's figure out something to be able to do this. And that's years down the road, but I mean, it was just, it's the roadmap. And I think that I'm excited that to do that. I mean, again, like right now, it's really kind of trying to find the means of what's going to fuel the engine. But I still think it's a great way of saying, hey, why not do it by providing better housing for active duty service members?
No, I tell you, I love your ideas, man. I mean, it's crazy. One idea can take off. you know, I'm sitting here talking to you because of the idea my son had, you know, from something that I never saw happening, and helping vets get the VA benefits they deserve, and just volunteering for you, telling him, and all of a sudden he said, Dad, we can make it an online course. So like, really? You think we could? And so don't be, you know, small things that you think of in the area of serving others, when you got passion for that. And like I tell people, when you're gonna go after that like a dog after a bone, and you ain't ate in 5 days, that stuff is gonna happen,
Yep.
because all it's gonna take is one spark, and you meeting the next guy, meeting the next guy, meeting the next guy, you know, and that's gonna happen. Man, let's go back to this part, because you messed me up. I mean, when you got out of the military, you had 600K in an investment, dude. But
I
that's phenomenal, man. I mean, you glossed over that, but I got to get back to the 600K, because most guys that retire ain't got a pot to pee in, as they say, in the wind to throw it out of. And you had 600K. What are you
it
talking
was
about?
it's one of those things where it's like not very comfortable for me to talk about, but they say, you know, when you talk about the business, make sure that you do this. And it's kind of makes me feel quite arrogant to talk about it. But it was that when I was active duty, when they say that you're younger, you know, you should invest more aggressively. And I didn't really see the point in doing that. I just kind of thought, why not go with companies that have been around for a while? And I had a few fundamentals that I focused on that really, you know, I didn't really care about the value of the stock price.
Right.
It was, I mean, I did, but what I really focused on were dividends. If a company was paying, you know, was going to pay me a certain amount of money every 3 months to own their stock, I am young, I'm working. And so what I did is just reinvested the dividends and continue to invest. And so that slow train that at the very beginning ended up becoming a pretty fast bullet train, just because the dividends started making more dividends. And over time, that's what really got me there. I mean, I made some calculated risks that did help. That I kind of thought that one of the big things that paid off was Brexit, actually, when England was leaving the EU. And I kind of figured, it's like, well, here's what's going to happen is that the stock market opens up at 9 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it does on here. The vote's already going to be in. So I put in all these sell orders of everything I owned. And if the vote went through, I was going to sell everything, because I figured the market was going to collapse. But if they stayed in the EU, then I just cancel all the orders, because no harm, no foul. Well, they left, and I sold everything, and everything, you know, fell just through the floor. And about 20 minutes later, I bought everything that I previously owned, and it shot back up the next few days, because when it just corrects itself. And so that was kind of one of the I think I was never really a risky investor. I think that was probably the biggest risk that I did, but it was also kind of like really it wasn't that big of a risk, just because of timing of where we're at. Like if I was in the FTSE or some of these other European stock markets, I probably wouldn't have done that. But you know, I had 9 hours to cancel orders, and it worked out well.
Yeah, man, that's phenomenal. Now my son's into day trading and do all that stuff. I don't have the nerve for any of that. My retirement, my investment plan was to do 20 years in and get a retirement check, and that worked out pretty good. And I still don't have to work for nobody. So I tell everybody, whatever fits your personality, you got to do. Because what you guys do, God bless you. I'm glad y'all do that. But look, let's get into this, man. I mean, tell me this though. I did want to know, can you just, while you're in the military, because there are going to be some people watching this video that are in the military, they want to get in investments. And I know you did the reinvestment stuff, and that's over my head. But talk about this. On average, how much money per month from your military check were you investing every month?
Being single, it helped. I was single. I didn't have any debt. And so I probably put 50% away into the stock market. But
give them a number, 50%, $1,000, $2,000. But what were you doing?
Anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 a month.
Okay.
And you know, I think a lot of people don't have the ability to do that, because they have other things to take care of, kids. They cost a
Right.
lot of money from what I hear.
Yeah.
And so, and that was another thing that really kind of why I bring that number up, just because some of the Marines that I would hear when Bitcoin was going up to like $20,000 and stuff like that, and I would talk to them about like, hey, maybe not getting to Bitcoin and getting like something a little bit more safer, like some of the fundamentals. And they just looked at me like I was speaking some language from the planet Xenu, from like they just, and so it was kind of like I think that their literacy rate wasn't the best when it came to investing, but they were interested in it. A lot of them think it's a rich man's game or it's gambling, and I'm kind of an example that it's not. It was just that you just don't go into a hot stock tip. There's got to be a few things you look at. But if your whole understanding is buy low and sell high, which is fundamentally sound, but it's not going to get you very far in the long run. There's got to be some other things you look at. And so that was kind of some of the things that I'm trying to keep myself going down from the rabbit hole, because that's kind of part of the plan that I hope to be able to do with what I'm doing, is that, if I'm fortunate enough and things go well, I want to be able to set up a system to where like 10% of the rents go into some sort of account for my tenants. So that way, they understand the importance of equity investment, like buying a home, and what it like, so actually they have a feeling of ownership in the home that they live in,
Right.
to some degree, and to really kind of get them to teach that. But I think I'm off track of what you asked, so I'm just,
No. It's good, man. I mean, I just kind of wanted to get an idea, because man, I've learned a couple of things in talking to you, John Morgan. Well, I mean, your grandfather, a Medal of Honor winner, and you got out of the military with 600K. I've never talked to anybody that did either one of those things, and you did both of them. So I think it's great, just a fascinating conversation. So where do you see life going now, man? How can I ask, how old are you?
I'm 41.
You're 41 years old, and right now I know you talked about, you live. Of course, I love the state of North Carolina. I lived there for 11 years, and I was messing with you before we started recording. I said, man, you're living over there near Jacksonville, man. You got Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach, Durham, Raleigh. I've gone all over the state, Mount Airy, Charlotte, everywhere in between. And you still love living over there and what you're doing. So what do you see going? I mean, give me some of the stuff in the future, man. I know you talked about that, but what else you got going on?
I think that North Carolina is a great place to really start, just because, I mean, you look at the population growth of the state, that it grew so much they got another representative. And so you look at where Jacksonville, North Carolina is, and so you have Fayetteville 2 hours away, you have Goldsboro 2 hours away, that's the Army and Air Force base. You have Elizabeth City 2 hours away, that's the Coast Guard base. And you have in Virginia, the big Navy base. And so those are kind of the areas I hope to continue to expand in. I got to make sure that everything is successful and the teams are put together here in Jacksonville, and really figure out the tempo and operations and how to do it correctly. And but that's what's exciting, is that I have something, hopefully an investment offering open up very soon. I try to do it to where anybody can invest, but the regulations are very difficult, and so it's only going to be open to accredited investors. But it's over. But I mean, there's time that, like, in a year, there's things that do open up to where anybody can invest, and I do hope to be able to open that opportunity up to people. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I do a shotgun blast to former service members, is because it's not because I see something that we have, like, oh, we serve somewhere together or something like that, but it's that trust takes time, and legitimacy takes time. And if I connect with people and there's some due diligence, some history that people can look at, is that when I get to the point of saying, hey, here's a safe investment, or here's, I'm finally able to the purpose of opening up this foundation and providing these grants in the way that I want to, that, hopefully there's some trust that I developed along the way, instead of like, getting to the point and then trying to develop that trust. And so that's the main goal, is trust.
Well, man, I'm telling you what, I'm loving just even your idea of the rental properties around military base. I know Gino has rental properties. I got another son that actually grew up in Fayetteville. He just got a rental property in Fayetteville. He bought a house, And I think, man, it's fascinating looking at your platform and how you want to do it around military bases. That's a winning formula, brother. So I want to commend you on that and tell you I love the idea. And I think Gino got some questions he want to ask you also.
Yeah. I mean, John, this is really cool. I mean, the mission that you're on, your why is really, it's really an incredible thing. Knowing that statistic, I'm not necessarily aware of how many people just publicly are aware of just that statistic of the 22 veterans a day. And I was actually in Publix yesterday, and it was a magazine, Ledger Inquirer. It was like the military, or veteran suicide rate. And I was like, wow, this is my first time kind of seeing it out like in a public, out in a magazine like that at a store. But just being somebody who is so into that arena and really doing something about it, what would you say to somebody who maybe isn't aware of what's going on in the veteran community, and how people can also be a part of the solution to just decrease that number?
I think it's really easy to, when somebody complains about, and again, I say this because I learned a lot of empathy. It's like people control your emotions and all this kind of stuff. And I was always there to listen to you if someone had a complaint, but then it's kind of that it's always kind of, you try to be nice, but you always still like, keep it together. It's like, it's what we do in the service and what we do in the military. And that's one of the big things, is that I learned that never judge someone's battle that they're fighting internally, because you never know. You never, like, when I would see some of these junior enlisted ranks, the in the hospital trying to talk to somebody and stuff like that, like, what could they talk, what could they have possibly be going through to need to talk to someone already? And it's like, again, you don't know what that person is going through, and so, like, don't judge, because you never know if you're going to be in that position. And if someone wants to talk to you, listen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, of course, with our business, we get a chance to talk to veterans every week in some capacity. And what I always tell veterans is, we've been programmed, indoctrinated to drive home, right? I mean, branch of the military without them giving you some type of indoctrination on no phone. And the issue with that is, what happened, frozen for a little bit. Yeah. The issue is, what happens when you're hurting for real? What happens when you are in pain and you do need to talk to somebody? We've been programmed just to drive on. Yeah. Well, I need to talk to somebody there, because I don't feel like driving on.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I learned it through firsthand experience, and knowing that the despair that to that point of just saying, like, I just wanted to stop, yeah. and it's scary. And, yeah. I immediately, like, regret that decision. I'm glad I survived it. I mean, to be honest, it was kind of that, it was my 38th birthday. I woke up in a great mood, and it was just, by that day, it was just like this dark cloud came over, and I really did want to end it, but it was kind of that, like, as odd as this is going to sound, it was that I didn't want to use the gun because I didn't want to leave a mess for my wife to clean up. So I ended up taking 70 Ambien, and I thought that, like, that was just going to put me to sleep, and that's it. Unfortunately, I woke up the next day in the hospital. And so, but just knowing firsthand that level of despair and that feeling of not being connected to anything, and it's part of the passion, part of the drive, is that knowing that fear, that hopefully other families don't have to ever go through that. Like, try to get people to say, tomorrow is going to be better, that, there's hope for me to get better. And, that I'm going to start rambling, but yeah, it's giving the opportunity of saying, like, hey, things are hard and stuff like that, but, I had this idea and this dream, like, maybe IzMaCo can be the answer to say, hey, like, I can build it through this company.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, thank you for shedding light on that, man. Over the last few weeks, we've seen, major celebrities kill themselves on or around their birthday. I know of a couple that have, and I won't mention them in the video, but we've had a couple celebrities, young celebrities, do that like on their birthday. And
Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out, my God, what I mean, on your birthday, what happens? And you just brought a lot of light to that. Incredible, incredible, man, for
I
sure.
felt I felt like I was a disgrace. Like I didn't have the right to my grandfather's name,
Wow.
and it was kind of that. Like at 38 years, like this is what's happening, is that I'm losing my career because I worked on homework with somebody,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think, what happens is, and again, I'm a Christian, so I got to go back to biblical things. The enemy wants to come in your mind. The enemy, comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and wants to get you thinking those negative thoughts. And that's the great thing about what we do when, the Bible says iron sharpens iron, we're around each other, we encourage each other. I
yeah.
think one of the toughest things that I dealt with was after my career, and I did 20 years. And I tell my wife will tell you, I was a basket case for 2 years after I retired because I had put in my mind that retiring was going to be like this, and it wasn't. You know,
Exactly. It
it,
was.
it- you know, it wasn't like I thought. I didn't like being a civilian. I mean, I had a ceremony at Fort Bragg, North Carolina on a Friday. That Monday, I was in Fayetteville, and I didn't know who I was. I did not know who I was without the uniform.
I after 13 years and 7 deployments and being an MSG, my time in the Marine Corps ended with me just picking up my DD 214 and leaving base, and it was
Wow. Wow.
and it hurt, and so it was like yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I know.
and my
I get it. And
my
look,
wife was like, I think she's an ER doctor, and so it was kind of like, it's being in a position where it's like, how do you really get help? I'm a doctor, and it's like,
yeah.
you're having a hard time, and really, how do we solve this? And so it's like no, it was, I guess right now I'm just kind of like, it just, I wouldn't say it feels good, but it feels connected to someone that really
Oh
knows
yeah,
what.
brother. Listen to me. What you're saying is pretty much what I experienced, and I retired. I did 20 years and retired, but I literally, you know, you know, end of June 2000, I retired, and I remember that Monday waking up going, okay, what am I going to do today? I
Mhm.
didn't have any civilian clothes. I had warm ups and blue jeans. I mean, I had warm ups and blue jeans, and first, you're going in for a job interview. I had nothing to put on, like no clothes. I had to go out, had to figure out all this stuff, right? And so I can guarantee you, it's amazing us having this conversation today. When veterans and other people watch this, people are going to say, well, I felt the same way. And oftentimes we believe, well, no one's feeling like this but me. But I can tell you, having a mission and a purpose that you have right now is what drives you to getting up every day.
Yes, exactly.
My wife is even said this. She said, I'm better because I'm talking to people like you every day. She said, talking to those veterans helped me. I guess I was pretty wacko walking around the house not talking to veterans every day.
I look at some of the things, like, in retrospect, I'm just like, my wife must have thought I was about to start talking to Tweety Bird a few times. It was.
Yeah. Cool, brother. This is great. Well, my son's got a couple other questions for you before we wrap up, man. I'm enjoying the conversation. It is
I
phenomenal.
I love the
Yeah,
conversation. I was happy to do it, and I'm really grateful I did it. So
Wow.
well, man, look, I'm gonna tell you this as my son get ready to ask you this question. Oftentimes we as veterans think we're cuckoo, and then we'll talk to another vet and they say, well, dude, I felt the same way. And
yeah,
then because oftentimes we believe that we can only talk to each other, and in certain things that's true to like understand where we're coming from. But I feel you, brother. I feel you for real.
Awesome.
thank you.
Man. Yeah, John, man, I appreciate you sharing your story, sir. And I'm honored that we just get a chance to give you a platform and really just, speak to you, because you're on a great mission to really make a big difference and change the world. And so I'm excited to let everybody know about IzMaCo, all our listeners to know about IzMaCo and what you guys are doing up in North Carolina. And just everything that you're doing, it really helped the veteran community. So of course, as we end the podcast today, one question we always love to ask, just as a period to a podcast, is, when everything is over, when everything's said and done for you, what do you want to be remembered for? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? And what's the answer to that question for you, John?
I want to be remembered as he tried his best. They talk about, like, when somebody dies, they want to be like celebrated and all, like, have a party and talk about my life. And I actually want people to be sad when I go, because I actually did something, meaning that I actually did something to make positive changes in their life, and my absence is missed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, and hopefully that doesn't sound arrogant, but it was just because I really do hope that I did some good things for some people I don't know and won't ever know, and continue to do that in the future.
That's awesome, man. Doing your best, and that's a passion. You're on a mission. You're doing some amazing things, and you're really, I think you're doing amazing things. So I'm sure you have a lot more to go for the rest of your life. And so just thank you for being on with us. Keep it up, sir. And I'll go ahead and pass over to my dad to end it for today.
Thank you.
Well, I can tell you, John C. Morgan, Red Morgan, the great American hero and Medal of Honor winner, definitely proud of you, brother.
Thank you.
I can tell you that right now, for being a stand-up man and going to combat like you, your sister, and your brother did, and serving this country. And as I get ready to close the call, man, it's been a very passionate call, emotional call in a lot of ways for me, because we talked about real issues that happen to so many veterans. And it's great that you have an outlet for veterans that don't think they can continue to get up and move. But I got to finish the call like I always do. To everybody, I'm telling you, stay in the fight!